So good afternoon, everybody. We're back after a short summer break for our urban living webinar series. And today we're going to be talking about the apartment and the hotel room of the future. My name's George Sell. I'm editor-in-chief here at International Hospitality Media. And we are an events organizer and an online publisher of B2B websites for the hospitality sector. Now, today's session is, this webinar series is sponsored by Flywire. Flywire is a global payments enablement and software company on a mission to deliver the world's most important and complex payments. It uses the Flywire advantage, a combination of next-gen payments, platform, proprietary payment network, and vertical specific software to help clients get paid and to help their customers pay with ease, no matter where they are in the world. And if you'd like to find out more about Flywire, you can see their details in the chat. So today's session is going to last an hour. We're going to have roughly 45 minutes of Q&A with the panel, and then we'll get around to answering some of your questions. We want to make the session as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, please submit them using either the chat or the Q&A function in Zoom. Everybody who has registered for the session will receive a recording, and you'll see that you have been automatically muted by Zoom. If you could keep it to that, then that makes our job a whole lot easier. So we've got a fantastic panel of speakers today. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to ask you all to introduce yourselves one by one, and we'll go from left to right. So Hilary, if you could kick us off, please.
Thanks, George. Thanks for having me on the panel. My name is Hilary Lancaster. I'm the founder and CEO of FIG, Fusion Interiors Group. We're a leading international interior design and branding company, and we're based in London. We have 8 other studios globally. We fused together our global team of designers, which results in designs that are innovative and solutions that are unique to every project. And we worked with some of the world's most well-known hotel and extended stay brands, but we also work with independent hoteliers, and we do workplace, resi and mixed use.
Thanks, Hilary. And Dylan, welcome to you.
Hey guys, thank you very much, George. I'm Dylan Sutton. I'm the International Growth Manager here at Tuya Smart and calling in from Shenzhen over in China. So a little bit later than you guys today. So here at Tuya, we are essentially a global IoT platform and developer platform. So initially we would work with connecting some IoT hardware suppliers here with brands overseas, such as Lidl or Orange, which may seem a little bit abstract in terms of working in the property market, which is because over the past few years, we built more industry solutions. And particularly I'm focusing on working in developing IoT into hotels and apartments and across the residential industry. So basically building kind of connected solutions for the centralized management of buildings to make them more efficient, more enjoyable, and a bit more profitable as well.
Thanks, Dylan. Craig, welcome to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, George. Despite what your slide says there, I don't work for Fusion, unless Hilary's going to try and poach me.
Apologies, notice that.
I work for Cycas Hospitality. We're a pan-European hotel company. We manage and run over 28 hotels in 6 different countries for 5 major brands. We were previously known as the extended stay guys in the market. And we brought brands such as Staybridge Suites and Residence Inn and Hyatt House from the US to Europe. We now have expanded our expertise, and we look after transit hotels as well as select service. We've had a fantastic year of growth where we've opened 12 hotels now in 10 years. My role is within the development team, and I look after refurbishments, rebrandings, and construction.
Thanks, Craig. And finally, Robin, welcome to you.
All right, thanks, George. So my name's Robin Keates. I'm Director of Forward Funded Delivery at Grainger PLC. Grainger's the UK's largest listed landlord. So we're a residential landlord, UK focused. And over the last few years, we've grown our build to rent pipeline. We're continuing to do so. So it's a 100-year-old business that has a long track record in being a landlord. But we are moving on from that to really focus in on build to rent or multifamily, as it's referred to in other countries.
Thanks, Robin. Okay, so let's start with a fairly general question. What are the main trends in hotel room and apartment design in terms of size, layout, and efficient use of space? And Craig, perhaps we can kick off with you on this one, because obviously the Cycas portfolio includes hotel rooms and apartments, so you've got a good idea of what's happening in both areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And the trend I'd very much like to talk about today is a new concept that Cycas are looking at with all the major brands in the market, which is to take a prototypical hotel room, so primarily a Moxie or a Express, bolt on a kitchenette, and then repackage that as a Holiday Inn Express and Suites or a Fairfield and Suites or a Moxie and Suites. And by doing that, we get the best of both worlds. So we get the buildability, the prototypical cost security from a traditional select service brand, but also we get the best of both worlds, where we can offer our guests a true extended stay experience. So it's a new concept. It's one that we're trialing, and it's one that we'll launch next year in the Netherlands, and it's super exciting. And I think it's going to be a game changer in the extended stay market.
Thanks, Craig. And Robin, from a build to rent apartment side of things, what are the main design trends that you're seeing?
So I think there's movements around the I suppose the arrangement of rooms in build to rent. We're typically looking at 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. There's different schools of thought when it comes to what we call dumbbell apartments. You walk straight into the living room and then turn left or right to get to bedrooms, versus a more traditional corridor where you enter into a little hallway and then you have your rooms opening off. It seems to cycle backwards and forwards. There doesn't seem to be too much regional differentiation, although perhaps London is slightly more forgiving in terms of the amount of space that people need. I'd say the other thing that maybe longer term trend is looking at standardization. And I know in the UK, we've historically been great at making life difficult for ourselves when it comes to reinventing the wheel on every single building. And, you know, we've got 10 schemes on site and a probably similar amount, you know, getting ready to come onto site. And every single one of them has subtle differences between, you know, what is otherwise essentially the same thing, a 1 bedroom apartment or a 2 bedroom apartment. So standardization, trying to simplify the core frame of the apartment. And then I came off a meeting just before this one, actually, with a modular construction company, volumetric modular. It's not something that Grainger have taken on board yet, but I think you know, as the pipeline grows and as the track record in the UK for volumetric modular becomes more established, then it's definitely something that the more risk-averse institutional investors like Grainger are more likely to get a handle on.
Thanks, Robin. But we'll move on to modular construction later, because I think it is an important topic. Hilary, you've also got a view of hotel room and apartment design, and a fairly international one at that. So are there any particular trends you'd like to single out?
I think I mean across especially the hospitality, one of the big trends is creating an experience in the room, connecting to Instagram, you know, because Instagram is such a big sales driver for the owners. So we're actually, I mean, we come up with it ourselves, but clients are asking us to create Insta spots everywhere or photo opportunities that in the room. So we did one of our rooms in Amsterdam. We created rooms like with huge baths in the middle of the room so that like 2 people can fit in the bath. And when they arrive, they have it, you know, personalized with champagne and a note to them, and that type of experience. You know, they're gonna have some cool shot posted on Instagram, and then, you know, the hotel will benefit from that. And it's that experiential element that needs to be brought into the design. That's definitely a trend. And also another trend, maybe more in the extended stay, is we have a lot more solo travelers now, you know, like maybe traveling for work, but they want to stop for like a month here in this country or a month there. And so they are looking for, I mean, it's a cliche, a home away from home, but I think in terms of a trend in design, the design is becoming much more comfortable. So that is for the solo travelers. And also in terms of design, a trend is now for the feeling of the space to be more natural, you know, like natural materials, wood, warm wood tables, wood furniture, curtains and fabrics and upholstery that feels more natural as well, sustainable, because as we get onto that in another subject, that's becoming more and more important to the future travelers.
Yeah, thanks, Hilary. Dylan, we're predominantly coming from a European angle here, but is there anything you'd like to add that you've observed from your part of the world?
I mean, in terms of rooms over here in China, I think the interesting thing for me, particularly with hotels, was during COVID and the way tech was like rapidly implemented throughout the process. So it was, you could walk into a hotel, like I got here last year, January now. So that was deep in it at the time. And they got into place within a few months, and there was smart locks in every room for contactless check-in to get into the hotel. Room service robots are now commonplace. Like I've been to multiple hotels where I can sit in my room and say to the smart speaker that I want, you know, a packet of crisps, and it'll be brought to me by a robot, which yes, adds, you know, that nice technological feel to things, but also it makes a much safer hotel. It makes people feel safer. And then that's kind of on the upper sort of level of things, but then a bit lower down the scale, it's vastly different here, largely due to the proximity to the supply chain. So I stayed at even like a beach shack a few weeks ago. And in terms of tech implementation, it's like a 2-star hotel, and it's all running on smart locks, all got some degree of smart technology involved. And which is really positive for me and the team being here, in that it's kind of, we believe we have a bit of a glimpse into the future. It's going to chop and change a little bit. For example, facial recognition is a really common factor here, which may not be in Europe. But generally, we can see the way things are going being placed here. And yes, there is a difference, but there shouldn't be for too long.
Mm-hmm. And although it looks like you are in a hotel room, you are in fact in your office.
Yeah, I'm in the office here, so I can spin the screen around actually. And luckily no one's here to bother me. It's a little bit late.
Great stuff. Thanks, Dylan. I have to say, bars in the middle of the room for Instagram and being delivered crisps by robots is making me feel a touch on the old side. Hilary, you mentioned that some guests are looking for longer stays, and it does seem to be a trend since the pandemic started that average hotel stays are increasing in length. And I think one result of that is that people are working in their hotels. They're traveling more. They're combining business and leisure travel. So how is the hotel room, particularly on the extended stay side, responding to that? And is it becoming a case of having more clearly defined zones in a room? Craig, do you want to pick up on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. And it absolutely is about zoning it properly. And to touch upon something that Hilary said earlier, it's that home from home, it's that residential feel, but it's also about combining that with the necessity for an office, for a kitchen, for storage. And it's about drawing all those aspects together to get the ambience and the spatial elements correct. Because keeping with extended stays, it moved away from those traditional bed, bureau, wardrobe rooms, and it really did draw in your experience from home. And that's such a critical thing with extended stay. But I think where it's tricky is where do you go too far and around materials and substances. And I think that's the fine balance about when it comes to getting extended stay correct.
Robin, are we seeing this zoning happen in build-to-rent apartments as well as more people are working from home? And what amenities would you provide specifically for people to enable people to work?
Yeah, so we have seen obviously an increase of people working from home for obvious reasons, and you know, I think we were. It actually was kind of a good news message to our shareholders at the start of the pandemic, which was actually people are using their products at Grainger, our apartments, more during the pandemic than they would during normal times. Normally, you know, you just come home when you need to, but during the pandemic, everyone was locked in making maximum use of the apartments. I think when it comes to things like dedicated spaces for home working, our biggest area of flexibility in design to be responsive is probably the amenity spaces down on the sort of the ground floor, the top floor, wherever we put them in each scheme. The rooms themselves, you know, the designs are often baked in a couple of years prior, you know, through the planning and design process, through tender, procurement, construction. So the time at which you can start to put in dedicated additional spaces, studies or study areas, it gets locked down really early, and we have that momentum in the supply chain and the delivery of these units. So it's very difficult for us to, you know, respond quickly to creating those spaces. So I think, you know, maybe what we need to start looking at is things like furniture solutions and, you know, working areas that could be a work area during the day and then fold away and go back to being a regular sort of apartment relaxation area at night time. But we've, you know, going back to the amenity, we have seen more focus on people actually working from the shared working areas that we put there. And I think in the past, it had been a bit of a photo op, a bit of a tick box. Yeah, we've got some shared working facilities, and you know, people might look at that when they come to rent a Grainger, but they may or may not actually come downstairs and work. Whereas during pandemic, I think we really did see people wanting to use that space, you know, for extended periods of time to do proper work. And so then other considerations come in about not only does it look welcoming, but is it a usable space? Is it well serviced? Is it quiet? You know, you don't want to put it right next to the pool table and what have you if people are trying to sit and work. So we're just, you know, spending a bit more time thinking through the practical details.
Mm-hmm. And Craig, what specific amenities are you putting in hotel rooms to enable people to work, and what are you putting in the communal areas?
I think the rooms, it's the fundamentals. It's a desk, or it's a working area, whether that's a desk or a seat table in a comfy lounge chair. But something we probably haven't touched upon is getting the basics right. So you know, your super fast Wi-Fi and reliable Wi-Fi, and then but even items of getting the acoustics right in the room, getting the service levels right in the room. So the best thing about when I stay in extended stay hotel rooms is I know I'm not going to be bothered or interrupted by housekeeping potentially. I know that I've got the space to work, and I know that I've got the facilities behind there to work. And then getting on to the public areas again, where extended stay is one thing, but we're almost broaching into co-living areas where we're looking at curating those spaces. So having everything you need for your day in the office in a dynamic work area that's 300 meters away from your abode, which works great. So do you have a Starbucks? Do you have a retail element? And then you have a breakaway area for interviews or for solo working. So it's about really combining the whole journey from home to the office in that dynamic workplace downstairs.
Mm-hmm. And we mentioned earlier, Craig, that Cycas has got a reputation for being a pioneer in the dual branded space, where you have an extended stay hotel brand alongside a more traditional hotel flag. Are you seeing now more of a hybrid of those, where a hotel will have a mixture of hotel rooms and apartments in the same property? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think I've already alluded to it, we're working with all the major brands now to try and develop that concept where we can take the floor plate from 3 standard 18 square meter select service rooms, and then above those on the same stacking create 2 extended stay rooms. So a lot smaller than your traditional extended stay rooms, but still packed with all the benefits. And then what we do in the communal areas, once we have that blend of extended stay versus hotel rooms correct, is then the hotel area there, we get the best bits. So we'll take the gym from an extended stay, the laundry room, the locker room, all those things that we know work in an extended stay hotel, bring them into the transient environment, and then we have the best of both worlds. And we actually find the transient guests use those facilities just as much as the extended stay guests, which is super interesting.
Mm-hmm. Hilary, I can see you've got your hand up there. Did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, it's been really interesting working on projects like that have gone across like COVID. So we started working on the project before COVID, and we're still working on it like now. And how we've had to change, like one of the hotels we're working on, I think we had like maybe like 2% or 3% of the rooms were like designed for extended stay, and now it's becoming like 20% of that hotel is now got kitchens, you know. And we've changed furniture in the hotel rooms, like our desks are different, The desk chairs that we specified, we've changed so that they're much more comfortable. You consider them more that, you know, so, and then we've also working on an extended stay that was before COVID and now, and we're having to adapt that as well. But that particular room design, well, when you were asking the question about the zoning, you know, like what we find is like the best for me, like the best room designs are where you have like one zone can be like, that zone could be the sofa area, that zone could also be the working area, that could double up as this and have the multifunctional use, which we'll get on into another question that you have.
Yeah. And those projects you mentioned that have changed, those changes have been made in response to anticipated changes in guest behavior that have come about because of the pandemic. Yeah,
I mean, just that we're all just, you know, working more, and we will continue to work more from our hotel rooms, or, you know, more from our apartments. Exactly, it's just completely, and it's trends that we know that will continue, because we know that we're not all going to be probably likely going back to the office, you know, doing our 9 to 6, 5 days a week. So, and the traveling has changed, like the business traveler has changed. Like I'm one of these like future travelers who I'll just stay somewhere for a month instead of like 2 days here, 3 days there. You know, that's completely changed as well.
Yeah.
So we have to adapt to that.
Let's stay with you, Hilary, for a minute and move on to what you mentioned, the actual physical ways that you can create zones and also make those zones multifunctional spaces according to what you actually want to do there. So what's available in terms of physical technology to make this work? You know, folding down furniture, sliding walls and stuff. Are they things we're going to see more of, or is it?
Yeah, I think like we've seen it a lot in the pod rooms, which is becoming a trend as well. But it doesn't have to be like massively complicated. It could be like when you sent us the questions, I was researching some, especially the pod hotel room, because that's when you see that real clever solutions, like for storage, or it could be like storage under the bed, or the bed can is a sofa during the day, and then, you know, at night it can transform. Or, you know, I saw a room it was in a brand in Hong Kong where the coat rack had a way of becoming like a bench seat, or it could be used for storing your luggage. So they're quite simple things. One of our rooms we've done, we had a TV unit in the middle to divide the sleeping area with the living area, but it's like this open unit where you can flip the TV around, and it has like a function for the sleeping area and a function for the living area. Yeah, I'll fold down desks and, you know, the obvious things. But yeah, there's a lot of things you can do, and I think that it doesn't have to be super complicated. It's just like being really intelligent about the functions.
Mm-hmm. And Craig, are these similar to the things that you're specifying in your rooms?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd echo every point Hilary made there, and I think the point you made at the start was that it doesn't need to be terribly clever. There's easy solutions that, as hoteliers, we've been doing in traditional hotels for years now. A couple of good examples could be by the clever location and positioning of interconnecting doors. So you can take a double room, a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment. If you stack that cleverly next to a studio and another studio, you can, by naturally doing those, you open up your lettability options, so you can have your standard 1-bed or your standard 2-bed, or you can open up those to create a 3rd, 4th, 5th type of room type relatively inexpensively, but easy to operate. And the other point is, again, just by being conscientious operators, you can also do this easily by having things like a reserve of furniture, additional size furniture. So if you have a big floor plan for a room, you know you've got a single pack or a single occupancy let, you leave it as is, but once your guest arrives or before your guest arrives, you can draw from that reserve of furniture, put a larger dining table in there, put a sofa bed in there, put an extra couple of lounge chairs in there. It's about being flexible and just being conscientious operators.
Hilary, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we should like definitely mention Zoku here, because you know, having their model of the, you know, the staircase up to the bed, and you stack the bed on top of the bathroom, and then you can fold it all away, slide it up the stairs, and then you've got your, you know, you've got your work area. I mean, this is like, everybody knows about Zoku and how genius this is. Also, there's a brand that I found today, Michelle Berger. Have you heard of this? It's a German brand. No. And they're doing a lot of the, you know, the bunk beds. So the loft beds, it's a very different look to Zoku. But it's really clever, and they have, unlike Zoku, it's more for families or big groups traveling together, and they really push this lofted beds concept. And in some of the rooms, even the vanity in the bathroom becomes a desk area as well. So I hadn't seen that before. I hadn't seen that your bathroom can convert to an office. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Hilary. I should have mentioned earlier that the LinkedIn profiles for all our panelists are available in the chat. So if you want to make contact with them and continue the conversation afterwards, then please do. Robin, I'd like to come to you next and talk about any instances you've seen of aspirational hospitality design being applied to build to rent, and perhaps even open market sale apartments. Are the units you work with now, do they have more in common with hotel rooms than they would have done 5 years ago, shall we say?
Yeah, I think the apartments themselves, we tend to look at it as a bit of a blank canvas for the customer. So I think the way that people use build to rent is obviously slightly different. You know, the timeframes that they have in mind when they move into a Grainger building are slightly different, and so there's an element of allowing customers to create their own spaces and to create their own homes within what we've built. So the main focus of the nuts and bolts, if you like, of what we're building is to create a nice, you know, well lit, usable space that allows people to put furniture in, either, you know, a furniture pack from Grainger or their own furniture, and have the flexibility to move that around in the way that suits them best. And so to a certain extent, you know, we're probably fairly conservative when it comes to, you know, the floors, walls and ceilings, because they become the background rather than the main event. I think, you know, we do work with interior designers very closely who work in multiple sectors, work in build to rent, but more often than not have a track record in hospitality. And we do ask them to bring some of the lessons learned across. So some of that is the furnishing of the show apartments, where we'll typically do an example 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom or 3 bedroom show apartment for marketing purposes at the start of leasing up a building. But I think the biggest, I suppose, area that we've been learning from is the amenity spaces, and saying that's really the key difference between a build for sale product. You know, my previous employer, Berkeley Homes, we were doing build for sale. Really, it was about the apartments, and everything else that served that was just, you know, minimized, and it was not value generating. Build to rent, the amenity is core to the offering, and that's the space where, you know, there's probably the biggest learning curve required, especially for the UK market, where it's that bit newer than for example, the States or parts of Europe. And that's really where we've been working with interior designers to look at hospitality and say, how can we make these entrance areas, these communal lounges, communal dining rooms, gyms, shared working areas, roof terraces, how can we make them really amazing places that pull people into the buildings and make people want to stay there?
Do you know what the average length of tenancy is in one of your apartments? How long do you anticipate people?
Put me on the spot now. I think I don't know is the short answer, so I won't give too many statistics, but we offer 3-year tenancy agreements with a customer-only break, so people can move in. They have the flexibility if they wanted to leave when they can, but they've got the security of knowledge compared to maybe a traditional 1-year AST. They know that they've got a home there, and we also have capped rent increases at inflation, so people know that there's not going to be a nasty rent hike in 18 months' time if the market picks up. So we do, it's in our interest to keep people in the buildings for longer, and I hope that through the work that we do on the amenity spaces really is to drive that customer interaction. And what we have found, and is demonstrated in the States as well, is that if people make friends within the building in these amenity spaces, and they do feel like they're part of a bigger community, then they definitely stay longer. Hence that sort of focus on community building through what we build, and also how we manage the buildings and operating community events and that sort of thing.
Yeah, the reason I asked, Robin, is a lot of rented accommodation seems to be quite segmented by age group. So you have student accommodation, and then you have build to rent, which I think until fairly recently has been associated with a younger demographic. Then you have senior living. Do you think it's possible that the rented sector might move towards more intergenerational accommodation, and what role could design play in facilitating that? Is it possible to customize a unit for a resident's life to suit their needs?
Yeah, I think we are starting to see the sort of early signs of a broader spectrum. So I think there is that core demographic, albeit I think the definition of young in the phrase young professional is getting stretched as people struggle to get onto the housing ladder. But we are seeing people who are maybe downsizers. They may have retired, moving into Grainger buildings because they recognise that they don't want to have the repair and maintenance of a family home hanging over their heads. They want a bit of a lock and leave, that they can go travelling, at least pre-coronavirus, and hopefully looking to the future, a bit more travel. And they don't necessarily want to move into what they might call an old people's home. They want to live in a young, vibrant community with, people who are up and about and doing things, community events, and we have a number of buildings with families as well, with young children in them. So you really get that full spectrum of society. I think when it comes to design, it goes back to that point around leaving a relatively blank canvas for people to make the apartments their own. We do have some apartments in some of our schemes which are designed with the sort of future living adaptations in mind, so it can be more easily converted to a wheelchair accessible unit, for example, albeit that's typically planning led rather than customer demand led at the moment. And then finally, it's looking at the amenity space and trying to make it hit the right mark in terms of a broad level of appeal. We don't want our amenity spaces to feel like nightclubs or trendy coffee shops, because you can go out to a nightclub or a coffee shop if you want to. We want it to feel just like a really nicely designed place to come home to after you've been out for the day. And so we need to make sure that we design it in a way which isn't excluding certain portions of the sort of age population.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. Hilary mentioned some trends in terms of materials and finishes earlier, but let's elaborate on that a bit. Craig, is there anything you're seeing in terms of trends into materials, both in terms of aesthetics and durability and functionality?
Durability is the word there, George. I think it's a case of we are pushing back on selecting materials just for the sake of selecting materials. So a good example for this arena would be a kitchen worktop, for example, where in the past you'd automatically go for a granite or a quartz or an engineered stoneware. Now we're finding that there's HPLs on the market and there's laminates on the market that are equally as attractive, as durable, and you can repair them a lot easier without having to repair the whole element. And it's about, I don't know if losing that snobbiness is the right attitude, but it's about evolving with the times and looking at the buildability of costs and just being more sensible and pragmatic with the materials.
Mm-hmm. And Robin, does that tally with your experience?
Yeah, definitely in terms of sort of reliability and robustness. I think we aspire to take more of a whole life approach to these things. So, you know, we a number of years ago, we stopped putting carpets in our corridors. We found that they just they wear out too quickly. They sort of attract smells if you're not careful. They're tougher to clean, all the rest of it. So, you know, as an example, we're using a product called Bolon, which is just easier to look after. It looks great, and you know, we don't have to replace it on the same regularity. When it comes to the apartments, I think what the focus in is moving away from a cost-based approach on the initial capital cost and looking at a whole life cost of products. So again, going back using worktops, just because they're a good example of life cycle products, is saying how much does it cost to put in a better quality worktop now versus what do you save by putting in a cheap worktop that then needs to be replaced in you know, 5 years time as opposed to 10 years time, and taking that sort of approach across the board. The trouble I struggle with at the moment is putting any kind of data behind the, you know, or science behind a decision. It tends to be done based on gut feel and anecdotal experience, and you know, that's where we rely on the knowledge and expertise of our colleagues at Grainger. We operate the buildings as well, so we can ask people who have long careers in building management about these different things. But I think that's the next stage for us, is to just get smarter about gathering data on the whole life cost of these products, which then feeds into reduced running costs and better sustainability.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. Craig, did you want to come in on that point?
Yeah, I just found it very interesting, and I thought that was a great example about how the service department in hotel industry differs from the BTR, really. Whereas we'll choose a material that we know is robust, attractive, not necessarily undersourced or underpriced, but because we've got an obligation to turn a room around 3 p.m. the same day, regardless whether that guest stayed there for 6 months or 9 months, that also comes into play, where we need to pick a substance and a material that we know is robust, attractive and nice, but also that we can quickly turn around, repair, because we don't want to take a room out of order and cost our owners money because something's going to take a week or two to fix.
Yeah. Craig, what role does sustainability play in your specification, and if it's increasingly important, who is driving that? Is it your owners? Is it you as an operator?
It's everybody, George. It's massive, and it's such a evocative and core subject. And I'm so proud of the company I work for. Some of the strides and goals we've made. I mean, you probably know this, but we were the first company in Europe to start not using small bathroom amenities. We were the first one to bring in the big 330 mils because we didn't want to use single-use plastics. We're the first company to have a BREEAM Excellent operating hotel in France. I'm building a hotel in France that's just saved 600,000 tons of carbon. And that's driven by the owners, but by ourselves, but also the guests. It's a great cachet to go and stay in a hotel where it's clear and obvious that there is an opportunity to be ecological and ensure that the builders, the operators, the investors, the owners all care about that, and it's an important ethos. And there's so many ways you can do that now, through amenities, through smart PMSs that talk to BMSs, through housekeeping regimes, through locally sourced suppliers. And I think sustainability could be a webinar on itself, but it's so evocative, and it's something that everyone really should buy into.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Dylan, let's talk a little bit about the role that technology can play in running a building more efficiently and the sustainability benefits that come along with that. How do you think that's going to change in the future?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing based on what we've had there is that push either from the residents or the guests or the managers. And we see it kind of balancing in different places around the world. Like when I speak to clients from Europe, they say, yes, we love that IoT can just by nature save a lot of energy in the building. You know, on our platform that we provide, there is a full back-end energy management platform, which can go down almost to the level of device, right? But then with Europe, the difference is we meet clients, even in hotels, who say, that's great, we love that you have an energy saving solution, but can you show our clients? And they want a solution now in which, you know, they want to be able to have people come into the room and go to the next step of knowing, okay, how much energy did I save by staying in this hotel? because when it breaks down to things like carbon credits people have to provide for travel, we're kind of seeing a prediction mostly in Europe, not so much here in Asia at the moment, but we hope that as things go further down the line, you'll be able to provide energy report of how much you've actually spent throughout your stay at a place. So the way we do that is actually fairly simple. It can break down to having a smart energy meter, and then also having a range of connected devices, right, that can manage each other. You know, you can see how much energy is coming out of a plug. And then also we have things called automations. So you might have heard of smart home automations you've seen. And this can be really simple. Like I can put a few devices together. So it knows, for example, if I go past the motion sensor in the room and I've been out of the room for 5 minutes, the lights turn off, like really simple stuff. And then it can go further down the line towards, for example, if the temperature outside goes above, you know, or goes below, let's say 20 degrees, it means that I can turn the temperature up in the room and then accordingly going the other way around. So it's all automating the energy control. And essentially with the thermostat especially, it's stopping people going and pressing it all the time. This differs, like in Asia, you know, it's mostly focused on the AC. Europe's mostly, well, Northern Europe and a lot more on the heating. But it's trying to make more intuitive and smarter buildings that are able to kind of manage themselves a little bit better. So we see the future of this, as I say, is going beyond just being a place that management can say, oh, you're living in, you know, a smart building that saves energy, which people find great. But we see the future of this moving forwards is that being able to show the residents in the building how much they're saving. In a hotel, this is great. In an apartment, obviously, this is very different because people are mostly paying their own bills. So that's why we have to be able to not just make sure they move into a room that's intuitively going to save energy, but give them the tools to actually do it themselves. So you teach them, okay, here's how you can save energy on your bills. Here's the devices you need to connect to do such. And it's actually pretty straightforward.
And you say that guests and residents are going to demand to know their energy usage while they're staying in a building. What else are they going to expect as standard in terms of technology from a hotel room or an apartment, let's say 5 years from now, because you've got a much better crystal ball than we have on this sort of stuff?
First one's going to be definitely smart lock access. That's going to be coming soon enough. Keys and even key cards essentially going to be ditched over the next few years, we see. And then as the standard gets raised up, we see more smart tech being involved. So if I go to like even what's considered the smartest hotels here, it's still fairly simple stuff. I can walk in the room. I can still control things in all the traditional way that I would before. So I can go up to the switch, turn off the lights, control the thermostat, but then I can also use my voice. So for example, 小猪管家, 开灯. And I can turn all that on, you know, which is like a nice technological effect of it. But then also using the phone as well. And then it's kind of bridging the gap. So at first it will just start with things like lights, curtains, thermostat, and then it expands out. Like I've got, for example, I'm going to flash the tech a little bit more as well today. So we have the essentials, like things like over here. We can go and we can see, for example, let's see. So we can go to reading mode here. That'll set that. And then you can see the toilet in the background. Should light up nicely for me as well. But these, you know, these are the essentials that you need in a hotel room, of course. But yeah, the expectation is going to change. I mean, it's slowly going to be from you move into a room that has these options and you think, wow, this is a nice effect. And in time, it's going to become more expected because as we see that we push the innovation more into the retail rental space, it's smart home is kind of being dominated by geeks at the moment and people who have the time and energy to go and kind of put this into their own home. And we've kind of seen that as a bit of a barrier to growth in the market. But with that growth of that build to rent space, now when people move into a smart home, it's going to become the expectation moving forwards. So the kind of point we push towards developers and property managers is like, well, this is going to be the case. It's not so much in the UK. There's been really big growth in the US. But in the UK at the moment, you can be the first mover and kind of set the standard. And then the ones who come after that, it's more the case of, okay, right, are you going to be too late and you're going to miss the boat here, basically? Because now people are going to, in the next 5 to 10 years, going to be coming in and saying, okay, well, how smart is the room? And if you pass over just a set of keys, they're going to say, well, it's not really what I'm looking for.
Yeah. It would appear to me that voice control is much simpler than using a phone or a tablet. So is that where the emphasis is going to be, do you think?
Voice can be a tricky one, particularly within hotels and within, you know, let's say short stay apartments because of the privacy issues that come with that from a lot of people. Like all it takes is one person to say, I'm not really a fan of using Alexa, and then it kind of screws the system in the room. So we kind of, with us, we provide flexibility to it. We say you can use an app, there is voice available, or if you want, you can still just press things normally. It's the same for things that goes to things like facial recognition. It's like it's on the table for you if you want, but be careful using it. So for me, when I look back, and my family and most of my friends in the UK, they have an Alexa, but it's still normally mostly used for waking you up in the morning. You know, most people go beyond that next step. And we'll see that, as I mentioned, that as you're able to move into the room and I can say, you know, turn on the lights, open the curtains, it'll go beyond being just a nice perk that puts a smile on your face. And eventually we hope that for those that accept it, it's going to be, okay, I expect to not have to get out of bed to open my curtains. You know, it's going to be something that people want.
Yeah. Dylan, we've got a question here from Claudia Scherndorf, who's asked if you need special connectivity solutions to make a smart room run smoothly.
Not particularly, to be honest with you. Like when we install the rooms, or we work with clients to install the room, yes, there's going to be Wi-Fi, as there would be in every building. But it runs, our solution anyway, runs mostly either on Wi-Fi or a solution called Zigbee. Some of you may or may not know. So Zigbee is one that when there's no Wi-Fi in the building, essentially, I can still control all of the devices. And that is literally just, let me see, there's a small box here. You get them for about $20, you know, 15 quid most of the time. And you can hide that somewhere in the room, and they can control the software, they can control the smart for a number of different rooms. So you can put one on one floor generally, and it controls the whole place.
Thanks, Dylan. Craig, how far away are we from having toilet seats operated by voice control in hotels, do you think?
Still
I'm being a bit flippant, but you know, I'm really talking about the whole sort of integration here and a range of services.
Yeah, look, I think it's something that would probably get VE'd out at maybe stage 4, to be honest. But and that, look, I'm all for technology. I think it's transforming the way we stay in hotels, we work in hotels, and I think as long as it's not a gimmick and as long as it's reliable, it's awesome. But I think what's so good at the minute is the advancements of bringing your tech from home, which Dylan sort of alluded to, and integrating that into your hotel stay. So when I can go in a hotel and log into my Sky account or get on my Sonos or on my Apple playlist through the tech in the hotel room, that adds that real boon of being away from home and taking home with you wherever you are. It's a real benefit.
And Robin, what are your plans for integrating smart technology into your build-to-rent units?
So I don't think we aspire to be right on the cutting edge. So I think the voice control flip-up toilets, which I think look amazing, I don't think they'll be featuring in the very short term. But I definitely agree with the points made that you don't want to get left behind, and it's quite easy to kind of get comfortable with what you think is the right level of specification. I already mentioned the lead time on some of these buildings. So what we're specifying now is actually going to be delivered in 2024, 2025. And, you know, if you've missed the boat, it's much harder to go back and retrofit these things. So I think we do have to spend time looking at that. And we do have sort of dedicated people at Grainger looking into our technology solutions. But I think when we are appraising what are we going to put in, we go through a bit of a thought process. So we think about how practical an idea is. Is it possible to achieve using today's technology, or is it something that's going to have to be implemented a little bit further down the line? Will customers and our staff be able to use it easily? So it's all very well if you put the technology in, but if that then creates a bit of a barrier, or it creates a drain on our on-site teams because they're constantly having to help people out because they can't get, you know, a certain feature working in their home, then, you know, we may end up it may end up costing us more money operationally. And then we look at the benefits. You know, why is it that we're putting this in? Is it genuinely solving a problem that exists, or is it technology for technology's sake? So we want to really see what are the benefits. Does it make the home cheaper to run or more sustainable? Would it justify higher rents because it's saving our customers money? Will it move us ahead of the competition, or improve the customer's sense of well-being or satisfaction in living in those apartments? Finally, we look at the costs and we say there's a setup cost, but also is there a maintenance cost or a license fee associated with the technology that we need to be aware of? how long will it last before it needs replacing or upgrading? You know, we're quite nervous about redundant technologies or backing the wrong horse in the old Betamax VHS sort of scenario, for those of you who remember it. And yeah, going back to, you know, will it require additional time and resource from the Grainger team to help support and maintain the new technology?
Yeah, okay, thanks, Robin. Hilary, did you want to come in on the technology piece?
Yeah, I just, you know, I was looking at the comment in the chat about Sam McMillan was saying the future guest is very demanding, and like, just to come back to, like, who is the future guest? We're talking about a future hotel room or apartment room, but who is the guest? And the guest is, you know, a lot younger than, sorry, all of us.
Yeah.
So the, you know, the Zoomers, the digital natives, they're growing up with a digital world, you know. So I think it's obvious that we are going to have smart rooms, because that's what they're going to expect, you know. That's, so I think it's just like an interesting point to think about who they actually are, who the Zoomers are, because they spend more time on their electronic devices than doing anything else. So they don't read books anymore, and their attention span is like a lot less. So just thinking about how do we design for this generation.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Dylan, did you want to quickly touch upon a couple of the points Robin raised there in terms of how this all works, you know, setup costs, license fees, and so on?
Yeah, sure. I think, first of all, we'll jump on the point of, is it solving a problem? The toilet is not. You know, the fact that I can open my toilet with my phone doesn't really solve much of a problem, to be honest with you. So we kind of focus on kind of generally, let's say, across our industry, which is still fairly small, there's kind of 3 standard value propositions that people take in. The one is to do with cost savings, both in terms of energy and staff. So, for example, if you have a hotel that doesn't need the front desk check-in, it's, you know, there we do have the staff shortage going on, but we focus more on, okay, now they're able to go and do the job that they need to do and they're good at, which is service. And then also obviously in terms of energy, which is a clear one. I won't run through all the details today. The second one, actually mostly more for apartments, is in terms of damage reduction. So, you know, the less glamorous devices in this room are actually normally the most attractive for property developers. So these are things like flood sensors or fire sensors, which are all connected and can be linked. So it's not just that if there's a flood on the 11th floor, it can tell me. It can also directly send a message and turn off other devices in the room as well. And then, of course, you know, when we look at the tech that's in the room, it's the question of how does it add value to the room, and therefore how much can you increase the rent or the price per room, which is a clear one. And that's one is a lot harder, to define. What we kind of try and do is go beyond that. We think it's not enough to focus just on ROI. You know, how much money can you save? Because still mostly, like you say, you get to that 3rd or 4th meeting maybe, and we put a smart toilet on the table and they say, no, it's not enough. So with us, we actually focus more on kind of getting the solution more widespread across the market and making it more scalable. So we kind of tend to either focus on solution providers and say, look, we can give you IoT, you can go and deliver it to people, or we go and focus on the other route and we say, okay, we can help you implement IoT in your apartment space, but then how's it going to generate money for you? So for example, with us, we go for the idea that you install a really simple apartment room, like there's a lock, some sensors for security, maybe a thermostat and some switches. And then the option is that when the guest is living there, because they still want a degree of DIY, especially on a longer stay, they can say, okay, look, I can see on the app, there's smart toilets on here, or you know, there's smart floor cleaning robots. Where can I get these? And we encourage people to say, okay, look, you can explore branching out here, and you can say, oh, actually, you can buy it directly from downstairs, and they can send it up to you. So it's creating revenue generation opportunities. And then we also encourage people to say, if you're the first mover in this space, for our software and hardware anyway, it can all be white labeled. So we say, if you genuinely believe in this and you have to, if you're going to take this route, it can be your solution. You can go and sell this as well. So that's kind of delivering that sense. And then in terms of cost, I mean, it obviously differs from place to place, but in terms of, I'll run through hardware, but in terms of hardware for like a standard hotel room, we'll say it's about £300 for the devices I just listed. The reason being is that because the way Tuya works is that we connect suppliers. So these are factory makers of these devices that are normally based here in China or Asia with retailers overseas. But if you go through us and we can help you supply the solution, we just go directly with the factory and it can be shipped over. And that way the benefit then comes back to, like I said, it can be branded as your thing. So if you want it to be the, let's say the Grainger, for example, smart lock, which you can then offer to people and the software as well, that's the way we go. So we don't just focus on how's this going to make my building better. It's more how's it going to prepare me for the business of the future, how it's going to open these different revenue generation opportunities.
Great stuff. Thank you, Dylan. Craig, moving from technology to bricks and blocks, something a bit more old school, how are hotels and apartment blocks of the future going to be built in terms of new construction techniques? Are you seeing a lot more modular construction, and what else do you think is around the corner?
Well, I think touching on modular, yes, we are seeing a lot more, and it's something that we're branching out into because it's such an interesting avenue to build hotels and apartments. And I mean, everyone knows about the obvious benefits around quality control at source and advancement and expedition of program. Then there's a huge sustainability benefit from building modular. From, you know, I don't know the percentage, but what percentage of hotels carbon output is from its demolition? And so if you don't demolish a modular build, you deconstruct it, and it's so much more ecological on that front, which is one of the reasons we love to do it. And then there's also this sort of what we call modular plus. So there's modular guys out there now that are using sustainable forestry and sustainable woods, so they're almost growing forest and forestry spaces as quick as they're harvesting and cutting down these woods, which is, again, I know it touches back on the sustainability, but it's so exciting to be able to replenish these resources quicker than we're harvesting them. Yeah.
And Robin, you mentioned you're not that far down the modular journey yet, but presumably that's the road you'll be taking ultimately.
Yeah, so we are seeing elements of modular come into our schemes. So bathroom pods, for example, off-site manufactured bathroom pods is now relatively common, and they're probably, we don't necessarily prescribe these things to the supply chain. We often leave it for the main contractors to make the final decision because they're the closest to the cold face, so to speak. But I'm probably seeing bathroom pods on about 50% of projects at the moment, and possibly increasing. And then also the people who tend to make bathroom pods can also offer other areas like utility cupboards, which is another thing that we like to reinvent from scratch every time. And I think there's real benefit there to standardizing things like bathrooms and utility cupboards. I think when it comes to the volumetric full volumetric construction, other factors come into play. So what's the warranty period? Can you get a mortgage on these if we ever needed to break up a particular asset and sell it onto the market? Is it a mortgageable home? I know that some of the warranty providers and companies like NHBC are looking at it closely to see what they can do to offer a product in that regard. But I think it's just a case of building that track record. And I know, there are companies out there, some of our competitors, Greystar, have launched modular building. There's still lessons being learned. And I think it's just at what stage you decide to jump on the bandwagon. I think you're right. It does feel that it's the way forward when you look at the benefits, not necessarily in terms of construction time on site, which is often touted as a benefit for Grainger. Taking a long-term view on an asset, saving a few months of construction is not a reason in itself to do something. But I'm particularly interested just in the benefits of quality control and fit and finish, in a factory environment, and those sort of things which end up ending in a benefit to the customer rather than, say, saving time on site.
Yeah. Do you think labour shortages and the rising price of a lot of building materials is going to expedite the move away from traditional techniques towards modular?
Not necessarily. I think it's probably just moving the same problems from one location to another. I think when you look at build costs, traditional versus full volumetric, they tend to all come out in the wash around the same sort of area anyway, albeit your cost spend is on a slightly different profile. And your construction period is on a different profile. I think when it comes to supply chain issues, You see it affecting everyone. So whether you're trying to purchase enough taps to build 400 bathroom pods, in an assembly plant, or whether you're trying to get them to deliver to site, at the moment it's causing a problem, and it's pushing prices, which is putting pressure on viability, definitely on the earlier schemes that we're looking at.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. Thanks, everybody. It's been a great conversation. I just want to quickly go to you each in turn and ask you to very quickly tell us about a superbly designed hotel room or apartment that you've seen recently, which includes some of the elements we've been talking about, and is an example perhaps of the way things will be heading in the future. So Robin, do you want to kick off as we were with you?
Yeah, I won't pick a Grainger flat. I'll try and be a bit more adventurous. A hotel room that we visited, it felt recently, but it was pre-pandemic. So it must have been over 2 years ago now. It was a really nice hotel in Bodrum in Turkey. And it was just a simple thing they did in a nice, fairly new hotel room with a really large floor-to-ceiling curtain that you could pull across to separate the space. And again, it goes back to what Craig and Hilary were saying about it can be really simple things that give flexibility and mean that what is during a day is a living space at one end of the hotel room. You pull the curtain across, and then you've got somewhere for the little one to sleep down at one end, and just a separate private bedroom for the parents at the other.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. So a low-tech example from Robin. Craig, what are you going to go for?
Yeah, no surprise. I am going to pick one of my hotels, and it's one that hasn't even been built yet. I was on site in Deventer in the South Netherlands last week, and it's getting back to this concept where we're taking a transient or a select service or even a full service hotel and adding a floor or 3 floors of suites, and we're creating a hybrid hotel room and suites. So we take a prototypical hotel room, bathroom, take a section of the plate, add a kitchen on there. It really is going to be a game changer, and it's for many reasons, from buildability to cost control to security, but also just because it's a darn good hotel room for extended stay. That is best of both worlds.
Thanks, Craig. Dylan, how about you?
Yeah, from my side, I'm going to be biased as well. We recently opened a hotel, worked with a hotel here to open, let's say here, and I sadly had to go and act in a video for it to demonstrate the technology, so I had to pull out some skills there. We work with them to make it simple but really effective. So, I was able to check in either using my phone or my face, get into the room doing the same way. The technology in the room, there was a smart toilet now I think about it, but it was curtains, lights, thermostat all being controlled with the TV. You can do that with your phone, your voice, or just the traditional way. You can use the app that they built themselves, or we work with them to build, so it creates their brand. I can use that to check in, check out, order food, and so on. And even for me, being in the space for a while, it still gives that feel as a guest that when you walk in, it's like, wow, this is cool. This is something interesting. And even though I work with it every day, I think the smile it can put on your face if you're into this kind of thing is really interesting. Thanks,
Dylan. And finally, Hilary.
Yeah, I'm going to be biased to pick one of our projects. We've just designed a really cool room that I mentioned a little bit. It's an extended stay that's going to be rolled out in Poland, and we came up with the whole concept as well as the branding, and it's all about waking up, like the idea of having a wake up call because of COVID, but also how do you wake up in the room? And we have this graphics that comes in when you wake up, and we work on the sensors. If the guest, we personalize it. If the guest wants to wake up to a coffee, we bring them a coffee. So there's that branding side of it, and also we've designed a kitchen zoning as well as the living working zoning. It's just, it's a really nice layout, and in terms of the look and feel, it's very kind of a mix of Scandi and Japanese, so it's like very minimal and sustainable as well. Like the materials are all recycled, and so yeah, we're really proud of that. So that's ours.
Thanks, Hilary. Thanks, everybody. Just going to run through a couple of slides quickly before we wrap up. So I'm just going to share my screen with you, and let's get that full screen. Okay, so our next urban living webinar is all about build to rent. We'll go into that in much more detail, and that's taking place on September the 29th. And if you'd like to register for that, you can see the details in the chat. As I mentioned earlier, this webinar series has been a precursor to the Urban Living Festival, which is a new event that we're launching. It's taking place at Tobacco Dock in London on October the 26th and 27th. We're very much looking forward to seeing lots of people in person. It's been a long time. And this event is focusing on the convergence of hospitality and real estate asset classes and all the implications that has. The event has got a fantastic range of sponsors, speakers, and media partners. So we'd like to see as many of you as possible there. It's going to be a really great event. I just wanted to play you a very quick video now, just to show you what we've been up to during the pandemic in terms of these webinars.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Hello. Good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon, everybody.
And welcome to the Trailblazer
Service Department News
Rockstars.
Urban Living Live
Engage.
Urban Living webinar series.
I think you have to tell the right story to the right people via the right people is really, really key in the right place.
Because we are all in the same, in the same boat. We want to make this work.
When you take away that personal contact, it's a problem.
Through the concept development, through the architecture, through the design, through the experience.
So although it's a growing sector, there's still huge scope for it to evolve even further.
So if you're interested in sponsoring any of our webinars or our events, do get in contact with my colleague Katie, whose details are there. Thank you for watching, everyone. Thanks ever so much to Dylan, to Hilary, to Craig, and to Robin for their input today. I think it was a fascinating session. Thanks again to Flywire for sponsoring the series. Do give us a follow on the social channels that you can see on your screen there. And enjoy the rest of your days. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye-bye.